Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest DZone webinar. My name is Jason Cockrum, and I am the Community Engagement Manager here at DZone. And we're glad to have you here with us today. We've got an exciting and relevant topic, and so we're really happy you've joined us. DZone is one of the world's largest online communities of software developers and experts. We publish all sorts of knowledge resources for developers and really anyone passionate about software development. We've got things like ref cards and trend reports and thousands of articles written and published by our community. And this makes us the go-to knowledge hub for software developers all over the world. We also do a ton of great events like this one today. And you can find them all at dzone.com/events. There you can see all of our past events, on-demand webinars, upcoming events, and all on a ton of great topics. So be sure to check that out. Here with us today, we have Joel Snipes. He's a data architect at Monte Carlo, and Corentin Lemieux, I think I got that right, from Castor.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Joel is a solutions architect at Monte Carlo and has over a decade of experience in the field, specializing in master data management and data engineering. He's worked across multiple industries, including oil and gas, retail, banking and finance, pharma, insurance, and healthcare. So he's been around a while. In his spare time, he enjoys 3D printing and real estate investment. Very interesting combination there. And Corentin is a data engineering manager at Castor. Throughout his career, he's covered the entire chain of data from acquisition to restitution, from the creation of monitoring dashboards to the construction of AI microservices. And before Castor, he held data engineering roles in multiple industries, including at several scale-up unicorns, where he was responsible for data platform and deployment. Today, we're going to be talking about data. As we all know, data is the cornerstone of modern business. But bad data can cost us a tremendous amount of money, as well as significant engineering hours. I mean, how much time do we spend each week battling bad data issues? Well, today we're going to spend a few minutes talking about some of these data governance challenges that organizations face in managing and utilizing their data assets effectively. And the goal, right, is we want to ensure that data is accurate, accessible, and secure. So it's going to be kind of a panel discussion. We're going to kind of ask some questions and get some answers, talking about data catalogs and data observability platforms and how they can work together to deliver more trustworthy and discoverable data. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first topic is going to be overcoming data governance challenges, right? And so Coco, maybe let's start here with you. What are some common data governance challenges that organizations face today, and how can we overcome them?
Sure. I think the main data governance challenges can be summarized in actually 4 questions. The what data I have, what are the most important assets, what quality I have on those assets, the who owns the data. It's about the ownership. Who knows the data? Who should I ask the question about the data? The where, of course, like the where is the data. We all know, I think, companies that store a huge amount of data, but you don't know actually where you can find them, and the how can I use it? How can I popularize the use of the data? And about how do you overcome the challenges? Well, I'm pretty sure that's the topic of the next questions, but I would tell that you can overcome those challenges with good ownership, good processes, and good tools, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think kind of a follow on to that is, having these data governance policies in place. How do we ensure that they're adopted throughout the organization, right? Because it's not just one touch point that's important. We have to make sure everybody's following these policies. So how do we do that across the organization?
Yeah, that's a big challenge for sure. I think the most important thing is to have some ownership, to have persons that are the guarantors of those governance policies. So that can be different persons, that can be a central data team. For example, when I was working at Vestia, we had that kind of data mesh approach where everyone in the company could use the data warehouse, but there was like one central data team that was the guarantors of the policies and the documentation and the quality of the data. It can be also like a data team that is specialized in the quality, a center of excellence team, for example, that can be data stewards. So yeah, the most important is to have some ownership, and that every data assets are owned by someone that can guarantee that the quality and the documentation is up to date. And for that, you can also, for sure, implement some processes, some policies to make it a bit mandatory, to make it in the production step. It's a bit like, I don't know, unit testing. If you do some code, I think no one likes doing unit testing, but once you add it in your process and once you are convinced that it brings value to your field, you will make persons adopt that process. And last but not least, for sure, it's a bit the carrot, the tool, the easy to use tool, because no one, I think, like documenting is maybe the most painful part of our job. And if you don't have an easy tool, it will be complex to ask the teams to spend a lot of time to document. It's a bit like Notion. I don't know if you use Notion, for example. I'm a big fan of Notion, and I really started documenting thanks to Notion, actually.
Yeah, documentation is quite important, especially to like onboarding and offboarding, right? There's been a lot of turnover lately. And so if trying to onboard somebody without proper documentation of data policies and procedures, it can lead to some problems. So Joel, changing gears just a little bit, having these data governance policies in place, right? How do we ensure that they are aligned with our business objectives and if necessary, regulatory requirements?
That's a good question, Jason. And I think it comes down to having the right people in the room. If we want our regulatory statutes and our business goals to be reflected in our data governance policies, it's going to be important that we have representation from the business, representation from legal, representation from security, the people who are going to be enforcing and managing these policies, buying in and contributing to them. I think it also helps to start with a framework to build your policy, because your policy is going to drive your procedures and your tool selection. So getting the policy right is really important. And I think getting the policy right is not a one-time thing. Matching the policy to the cadence that your regulatory rules are updated and that your business rules are updated is important. So if you set your business objectives quarterly, I think you should be reviewing your data governance policy quarterly to make sure they reflect those business goals. And generally, I think regulatory rules in your policies can be updated probably annually and should be looked at least that often.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, especially as, these days data is more and more tied into business goals and objectives and even revenue in a lot of cases, right? Like they're so inexplicably linked that you can't get away from them, right? And so they kind of have to be moving in tandem or you're going to be in trouble. Cool. So kind of following on from there as well. So, the roles of data stewards and other stakeholders, what kind of role do they play in ensuring effective data governance?
Yeah, data stewards are incredibly important. They're your boots on the ground. I like to think a data steward is to a data set as a gardener is to a garden. They need to maintain the security of the garden from bad actors. You don't want your bunnies and deer coming in, munching on your vegetables. They need to make sure that your data is complete. So if you have empty spots, you need to sow the seeds and find the right thing for that spot. And then I think importantly, you hear all the time in the data industry, garbage in, garbage out. But truly, there's always going to be a little bit of bad data that slips through. So data stewards are the person pulling the weeds, making sure that when the bad data does slip through, that it's corrected and going to be accurate going forward.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like that. Cool. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is scaling data quality initiatives, right? Like we need to have data quality policies and procedures, right? It's very, very important. But we also have to be able to scale them effectively, or again, we're going to run into trouble. So Joel, maybe we'll start with you this time. What are some of these common data quality challenges that organizations can face when they are trying to scale these initiatives?
Good question. I think another trope of the data industry is the siloing, and then you have redundant data in different silos, and you have to get to the single version of the truth. So that is where a master data management practice really comes into play. Another common challenge is observability. So this is maybe my data is great, but are my pipelines running on time? Is all my data making it from one end of the pipeline to the other? That sort of thing. Data observability really helps with scaling because you can see how your data is flowing throughout your organization and trace the next most important thing, which is lineage. So if you do have a data quality issue, it's the longer that data quality issue lives, the more people it affects. And importantly, we need to know who it affects. Too often, an end user of a dashboard can tell the data is incorrect, and they lose trust in that dashboard. But they are the ones alerting the data engineering team that something has broken. And ideally, if something happens to one of your data assets, we need lineage to understand the downstream impact so that we can get ahead of those issues. And then finally, security. We need to make sure that the data is only accessible by the right people, because we've all seen the big publicity around the data incidents at all the large companies that have happened over the years.
Right. Okay, so you talked about a few different initiatives, right? Which ones would you prioritize first, right? Like, what would you say is kind of you have to have in place before you can do other things?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. But I think the key word in the prior question was scale. Mm-hmm. And what is the least scalable part of a data governance practice? And it's generally the people, right? It's easy to scale the hardware. It's easy to scale the software relatively, but it's hard to scale the people. It's hard to hire good talent right now. The marketplace is competitive. So I like to think about which of these 2 or 3 initiatives is going to give us the most bandwidth back to our data engineers so that they can be focusing on those business cases. And I think observability and lineage really lets your data engineers focus less on troubleshooting and more on building awesome engineering projects. And it also builds the trust in the data, because if you have observability and you know when the data is bad, you also know when the data is good, whereas previously you were never quite sure.
Makes sense. And you know, at the beginning of your response, you spoke to hardware and software and scaling and things like that, right? Can you speak to any specific tools or technologies that you found really help scale data quality effectively?
Yeah, so a lot of the organizations I'm working with right now are trying to transition to the modern data stack. And what that looks like is a data warehouse, a cloud data warehouse like Snowflake or BigQuery. You're looking at an orchestration tool like dbt or Airflow to manage your pipelines. You need an awesome data catalog like Castor to understand and have the context to your data. And they also do some really cool things with lineage. Observability tool, got to plug Monte Carlo here because they are the best in class. And then I think about my BI tools. So I want a cloud BI tool like Looker or Power BI to provide those insights that we're working so hard to build and maintain to our end users.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Coco, maybe switching gears to you a little bit. You know, as we're scaling these initiatives, right, how do we measure their success? Or how do we know that they're working? You know, what metrics can we use to make sure that we're heading in the right direction?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because I guess like when I started to work on that matter, and it's quite a new topic, the data quality issues. I mean, like it's an old topic, but that is started to be tackled more and more now because we have the right tool, as Joel said. But I would say that at first, sadly, I mean, a lot of companies, I think you mentioned that, Joel, are relying on end user feedbacks. It means like when someone is using a dashboard and seeing that there is an issue with the graphics, they send a message to the data team and say, I can't trust that dashboard. I can't trust that metric, or the dashboard is wrong. So, I mean, it's not an issue, I would say, as long as you are quite transparent with the data quality of your assets and that you provide a trustful culture. But it's important to note the number of incidents you have. Every time someone says that the dashboard is broken, you can note it in Notion database, for example. And you can try to see if your data quality initiatives are lowering down those incidents. You can maybe put some NPS score on the data platform. I like to ask feedbacks on the end users of my data platform and talk to them to ask if the data platform is good, if it's better than it used to be. And once you have those kind of qualitative feedbacks, you can also implement some data quality tools, like for example, Monte Carlo, and rely on the number of actions you have to have a more objective metrics. But for sure, you will have, in my opinion, to rely on both the quantitative metrics you can get from a tool and the qualitative metrics you can have from the end users. In Vestiaire, for example, at Vestiaire, we tried, because we opened the data to everyone. At the end, at first we relied on the end user feedbacks, and at the end we started to distinguish the incidents from the ones that were detected by us by an automated process and the ones that are detected by end users. And we put a severity that was higher to incidents that were detected by end users to try to lower their number.
Yeah, it's important to, data quality is obviously super important, but everybody, we're all under pressure to deliver faster, right? And there's an old adage from the movie industry out in Hollywood that, when you're making a movie, you can make it good, you can make it fast, and you can make it cheap, but you only get 2 out of 3, right? And I think the same thing kind of applies to data, right? So you want data, you need good data, you need it fast, and you want it cheap, but you only get 2 out of 3, right? So how do we balance the need for data quality with the need to deliver results and insights from that data quickly? Like, how do we balance that?
How do you balance the need for quality and deliver quickly, right?
Correct, yes.
Well, I would say by not being scared of opening your data to the company. And for that, as I said before, like you need really a transparent communication on the level of quality. And say, okay, this project, it's just a POC, just a proof of concept. It does not have the standard of quality we can expect from a critical asset, for example, but you can still use it and provide feedbacks. So it's important to label the assets you provide to external teams. And that's something that you can do on your data catalog tool, for example. Once you open your data to everyone, I mean, you can also let people create their assets and let people create their dashboards. And that helps to deliver quickly. So for example, we have a central data team, and you can have business teams that have access to data and dashboarding solutions, and that can try to do their own dashboards. I think the data mesh approach is really helpful to deliver quickly. But in the end, once you let everyone create their own assets, the most important is to have a name in front of that asset, a responsible of that data set, so a data steward, or you can put any name on that, but at least to have an owner and to have maybe a process to validate the asset. So once you prove the value of one dashboard, for example, created by a business team, you can ask the data team to review it. You can ask the data team to provide the good practices. We had that kind of meeting every week where the data team just answered to all the questions everyone had on the assets, or just to how to query the data. So, I mean, I really believe in the open source culture, where you propagate the good practice, but where everyone can do where anyone can deliver, and that can help to deliver quickly.
Yeah,
so maybe the main idea is that technical depth is something that should exist, probably, because if you don't have technical depth, I mean, you probably don't move as quickly as you should. but you need to be able to control that technical debt.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I like how you talked about, being open and opening your data to everybody, because, it makes sense, right? The more people you have helping you, the more people you have involved in the data, the easier it is to spot problems and the easier it is to get what you need, right? And I agree with you about technical debt. It's like running a business, right? If businesses have to have a certain amount of debt to be able to grow, but they have to manage it effectively or they go to business, right? I mean, we're seeing that happen right now, right? So that's a good point. Okay, so we're going to move on, switch gears just a little bit. We're going to be talking about data catalogs and observability platforms. And so, Joel, we'll start with you again. So how do these catalog and observability platforms work together to improve quality and discoverability?
Yeah, so I think coming off of a little bit of what Corentin was saying, you're building these policies and procedures that are helping you move more quickly. You're building these muscles there. Your users are starting to go to your data catalog to get context about the data, to understand lineage. And I think additionally, we can make that a place where they can build trust in the data by providing them with data incidents. So a pattern I have seen becoming more and more popular among my customers is they are pushing their data incidents not just to their emails and Slack channels and Teams channels, but more and more often it's being pushed to the data catalog, because that's where customers are coming to understand the context of the data they're consuming within your organization. So there's a real opportunity there to build a tight integration between your data catalog and observability tool, so that you can find your customer can come and look at that catalog page and know if there's an incident. And if they know there's an incident and they know they can't trust the data, then it provides them with the ability later, when there's no incident, to be able to trust it. Because too often, I think the end users of data, they see something wrong with the pipeline, or they see something wrong with their BI report, and maybe the error only lasts a few hours or a couple days, but the damage actually can last months. Because now when they see that error, they don't know if they come back in a week, well, can I trust it now? Can I come back in a month and I trust it now? And you have all this money and time and energy you spent in building this reporting mechanism or these awesome data engineering feats within your organization. But if your end user can't use them, have that trust, it's wasted. So using your catalog and your observability tool together, I think, can build that trust with your customers.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And actually, it's also something that we want to do at Castor, is to be able to connect to tools like Monte Carlo, because we truly believe that it's two topics that have their own personas. And I think each tool has a lot of good stuff for data cataloging or data observability, and connecting those tools is really the most important part of our job.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in there, Corentin. Actually, question for you, or maybe either one of you, could you guys provide maybe a specific example of how you've used catalogs and observability platforms to improve your data health and discovery? Do you have an example you could speak to?
Yes, well, actually, a funny anecdote, like when I was one of the first clients of Castor, I think, when I was working in a previous scale-up, Vessia Collective. So like we use Castor as a data catalog. I think like something that really helps, that I really enjoy as a user, is really the search engine. Like it helps to discover the data. And we used a lot the SQL queries, the popular SQL queries that you can find on the tool, to be able to know how to query data, how to connect the data. We use Castor for finding duplicated assets and removing them. And we used lineage features for being able, I think Joel mentioned that, to be able to know how a data asset is built. And if you have an incident, for example, if we have an alert from Monte Carlo or from DVD test or another tool, you can know exactly what assets you are impacted by that.
Yeah, I can think of another one. especially in the current environment. There's a lot of my customers are tightening their belts a little bit. And one of the benefits of having access to the data warehouse's metadata and query logs is we can really understand which assets are most important to them, but also importantly, what assets are gone stale, what assets are taking up millions or billions of rows, but haven't been touched in months and months and months. And so I think a cool way you could use your observability tool with the catalog is to look at our asset cleanup report for tables that aren't being used. It can be a little scary to delete a table in production. Go to your catalog, understand the context, understand what that data is, make sure it's okay to delete, clean it up, and save that money on your Snowflake or BigQuery budget.
That's a good point.
So you can use, like, I just got an idea from previous questions, but if you want to use both data catalog and data observability platforms, you can use probably the data catalog to find the popular assets that you will prioritize in terms of quality initiatives, for example, because like.
Yeah, that's a good point. So when organizations are looking at, choosing and implementing these catalog and observability platforms, what are some best practices for that? And then maybe kind of a follow-up to that too, like how do you ensure that these tools are integrated into your overall data governance framework, right? And maybe either one of you can answer this one. So just like, what are some best practices for that? And how do we ensure that these tools are integrated properly or effectively into our governance framework?
I think you need to focus on being integrated with processes, teams, and tools. So I would say if you want to really ensure that it's integrated into your company, first probably choose a solution that can connect well with your different tools, that can connect automatically with your data warehouse, your different assets. Increase the number of automated process so that you don't rely only on human initiatives. And for sure, you need also to integrate well with processes, so to make some habits on cataloging and observability. For example, I like that kind of analogy with like the 1 apple a day kind of habit of documentation. Try to document regularly, start with the most important assets, do it every day, and you will have a process that will probably work for that. And also something that I like from the unit testing part that I talked before, it's make it useful. Like if you find a way to make the data governance useful, and it should be like, we are quite convinced that data governance is bringing a lot of value to a company. So you need to prove that it's useful. And once you convince everyone that data governance, data observability, and data cataloging is useful, you will have a strong adoption. The last maybe idea is to make it fun. And for that, I really like the way that Stack Overflow is using to make everyone answering to posts, like by granting points. Every time you have a useful question, you can give points to someone. You can earn badges. You can earn new permissions. And it's also like something that we are starting to think about at Castor, how to also make it really fun and start some gamification initiatives.
That is a really cool idea. We need to gamify making our data clean and correct and complete. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is a great idea. So that's really cool. Yeah, gamification really helps make it a lot more fun, a lot easier to do the things you don't necessarily like doing, right? Cool. So let's spend the last few minutes here talking about how we can maximize our data health and discovery. So Corentin, maybe start with you here. How does maximizing data health and discovery impact our organization's ability to make informed business decisions, right? Like that's what we want to do in the end of the day, be able to make better business decisions. So how does this help, right?
Yeah, sure. Like, I think I don't need to convince anyone that without data, you progress blind. If you just make decisions with your instincts, it will be probably wrong decisions. The main benefit is that you won't be able to see that you ride for a fall because you don't analyze the impact of those decisions. But if you have poor data or poor discovery, you will make probably poor decisions. I have, for example, an example. When I was working at Air France, we built operations research softwares. For operations research, it's a field, a bit a niche field of artificial intelligence. And the main idea was to model a business problem into a mathematical problem and provide that model to a solver. And the solver can give you an optimal solution for a business decision. If you provided wrong data, poor data, you would have a complete different solution that might be not adapted to the field. And that can be actually worse than your instinct decision. So that's the main idea. Having a good data will help you to make good decisions for sure. It will also help a lot for you, the trust of the business users, because you might have a poor adoption of the data initiatives in your company. If you have poor data, if your dashboards are wrong, no one will want to give you anything to make your data initiatives evolve. And it's also like a lot of time lost. If you have poor data, your data team will be pinged every day by business users saying that there is issue in the dashboards, and you won't be able to make new initiatives.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Joel, could you talk to just quickly about maybe some of the challenges that you can face when you're trying to do these things at scale?
Yeah, that's the tough part, because it's easier with the smaller levels. You have a lot of data assets. New data assets are being created every day inside your data warehouse. So getting coverage of everything and writing that many tests, we've talked about before that no one, according to mention, no one likes writing unit tests. No one likes writing documentation. As your assets grow, the number of unit tests you need grows. The amount of documentation you need grows, and that's not fun, and it's expensive. I think another challenge is with the noise. So you write all these tests, and maybe you set a hard limit, like a hard-coded limit on the number of rows that could be deleted or it could grow by. Over time, the way your data grows changes. Or even if you set it as a percentage, the percentage of a 10,000 row table is very different than the percentage of a 100,000 row table. So what happens is these tests go out of date over time, and they have to be maintained. And those all lead into the biggest challenge of all, which is bandwidth. We have a limited amount of data engineering talent and time, and we need to spend it in the most effective way possible. So how can we use the right tools and minimize the amount of human time spent on documentation and testing, and maybe use things like ML? We're in the golden age of AI is just starting. How can we take some of those tasks away from data engineers so they can focus on those really important business deliverables?
Yeah, that's important. You talked about tools and technologies and stuff, and Corentin, maybe you could speak real quickly to any specific tools or technologies that you're currently using or you have used in the past to help you do these things.
Well, the different tools I use for health and discovery, I think you mentioned a lot of different tools I could use as well, Joel, in a previous question. Maybe the first tool we used that had a strong impact was Snowflake, because by making it accessible to everyone, we helped on that, again, on that crowdsourcing idea. We use Castor. We use Castor at Castor as well to document our data, because it's really easier to document the data, and you spend less time on that. We use a lot of dashboarding tools as well. For example, Tableau, Metabase, Looker, any tool that can help you to create graphics will also help you to detect some issues in your quality, to be able to share metrics about that. And about the health, we tried DBT test, we tried Great Expectations, and we tried as well Monte Carlo, and I really enjoyed what the Monte Carlo approach, because for a lot of different quality tools, you have to manually set a lot of different alerts. And what I liked with Monte Carlo approach of data quality was that a lot of stuff was automatized. I truly believe on tools that can help you automatize some initiatives. So at Castor, we document a lot of assets for you by propagating. And at Monte Carlo, they create for you a lot of different quality alerts. And I think that's great.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Joel, if you don't mind, last question here, right? When making these investments in these tools and technologies and things like that, right, it's important to know that they're working, right, and that we're getting what we need out of them. So how do we measure the ROI of these investments, right? And how can we use those metrics to guide investments in the future, make sure we're making the right business decision?
Yeah, I think data is following the maturity path of DevOps and application development in terms of how we're going to measure this. So when we look at DevOps and application development, we have server downtime, we have application uptime, and I think in data, we have something called data downtime. And data downtime is the amount of time your data is missing, erroneous, or otherwise inaccurate, and that has a cost on your organization. Sometimes it's quite large. I have a customer who, during our POC, they made loans based on a machine learning algorithm. The machine learning algorithm was great. Data pipeline feeding it was bad. And they didn't know until our POC that there was an error there. And they had already made a very significant amount of bad loans off a pipeline they didn't know was having issues. So one way you get our ROI is managing your data downtime, mitigating that risk. Another way is ensuring the return on investment of the other investments you've already made in your data environment. You're investing in this catalog, you're investing in this data warehouse like Snowflake, and your BI tools and your master data management tool. And exactly like that machine learning algorithm, a bad pipeline can either cause you to make a bad decision, or it can destroy trust in your users, and then they aren't using that investment that you're spending on. So it is a security blanket that ensures value from your other investments. And then finally, another metric I think is great is how many data pipelines can your data engineer maintain? A engineer to pipeline ratio. And as you're spending less time troubleshooting and your data quality improves, your pipeline to engineer ratio will also improve. So I think that is a great way to see how that data quality journey has saved you, is seeing the effectiveness of your engineers grow over time.
That's cool. That's a really good point. I like that, the engineer to pipeline ratio. That's good. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Just on that matter, like Luis from Castor just sent me a link a few days ago. I found it awesome. Like it's we shared on our blog, on Castor blog, the ROI calculator for data catalog, observability, and discovery initiatives. I found it amazing. Like you can ask on the blog an access to the calculator, and you will find some ideas on how to compute, because it's very hard to find good metrics. But we really decomposed the ROI on onboarding, discovery, and cost of infrastructure. You can select a size for your team, and we share our assumptions in terms of numbers, and you can change that, I think, and do some computation yourself.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a really great tool. So definitely go check that out if you're curious. So thank you, Joel and Corentin, for joining us. Do you guys have any last minute thoughts you want to add about anything we've talked about today?
I don't know. I'm excited about checking out that ROI calculator, because I think a lot of times we spend a lot of time on the policy, a lot of time on the tool, but it's important to calculate the the return, and it is difficult. So having some patterns to follow and some tools to help you do that sound really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely encourage you guys to check that out, everybody who ends up watching this. So, and I want to thank you guys so much, Joel and Corrington, for joining us. You guys, this has been really, really interesting. As we talked about at the beginning, data is absolutely vital to business these days, right? It's so irrevocably linked to business outcomes and goals and all those kinds of things that as Joel spoke to a few minutes ago, having bad data can lead to some very costly business decisions, right? And you don't know what you don't know, right? So it's not intentional. It's just you got to make sure you have the right data and it's telling the right story, right? So thank you guys for joining us. It's a really good topic. And I just want to encourage everybody who watches this to check out our website again, dzone.com/events. There's a ton of other great events just like this one today. Again, we've got all sorts of on-demand webinars, virtual roundtables, fireside chats, and all kinds of stuff there. So be sure to check it out. And who knows, you might even see us in person at some point this year. So check out our website for any list of upcoming events in person that might be near you that you can meet us up at. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or week or wherever you are. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much, Joel.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason.
See you.